Please welcome Jacob and Dan. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Are you going to get...
Yeah, here, I'll come over to this side. Brad, still got stuff.
Yep, I'm mic'd up. Yep.
Awesome. Well, welcome, everybody. Here, and Brad, thank you so much for the intro on it. So, I guess, Dan, do you want to do a little intro for yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Dan, the founder of the co-founder and CEO of Dacity. We are an analytics platform. We also have a data agency. So if you need help in actually implementing a lot of the data and data-driven decisions you're going to make, you can always reach out to us. Before that, if any of you have ever bought flowers for your mom from Pro Flowers, I apologize because I was responsible for spamming you for a long time. So before joining Dacity, I ran customer analytics for 8 years for Pro Flowers. And so this is something that I'm super passionate about. So if you have questions, I'm here for 2 days. Just come bug me. I'm here to help you all because data is really important to helping you drive your brand, whether it's digital marketplaces, or mass retail.
Thank you, Dan, on it. I'm Jacob Hadberg. If you guys don't know, actually, Elevar said, what would be great is, Dan, Jacob meet Dan, Dan meet Jacob, do a session together on that. So I'm Jacob Hadberg from Sky Diamond Elite. We're a performance marketing agency. My background comes from hardcore affiliate marketing, then SEO, conversion rate optimization, data analytics, paid media, paid social on that. And that's my little quick introduction here. Let's jump ahead on it. Oops, let me back up one, Dan. There you go. So what are we going to be talking about today on this? Oh, actually, could we get our panel on? Thank you so much. Framework for becoming data-driven, building your analytics foundation, approach and digging into the data, and then some examples here for us. So Dan, I'm going to let you take it away from here.
So this is a framework for how to become a data-driven organization. A lot of people think, hey, let's go buy a tool and I'm done. It's really a lot harder than that. And you're not going to have to deal with all of these at the same time, but you are going to have to deal with all of these different aspects. So insights, and we'll talk about each of them briefly over the next 30 minutes and we'll leave some time for questions. But insights is really deciding where do I want to be in my analytics journey? Am I starting off basic and trying to do just reporting? Or am I trying to build something that's going to tell me exactly what I need to do? You're going to have to get infrastructure. Are you just living in Google Sheets? Or are you in Google Analytics? Or are you doing something else? And then who's going to do it? Who's going to do it in your organization? That's a real challenge. Governance and planning, which is really about implementing processes, making sure that what you do is correct, and then organization and culture. And as I said, you're not going to have to tackle them all at the same time, but at some point, if any of these fail, you're going to find that becoming a data-driven organization is really challenging.
All right, and then I've got kind of a quick little engagement for the crowd. This would be super helpful for us. How many of you guys, real show of hands here, actually use Google Analytics? Hands up. Perfect. So just about everybody in the room on that. Next one that I've got, how many of you guys have a data warehouse or CDP? All right, that's pretty good on it. I know we don't have this cool technology as maybe the other group, and maybe we'll do that next time. How many of you guys are on Shopify? Okay, almost everybody. This is the real test, Brad. How many of you guys have Elevar? All right, round of applause for everybody, and I'm sure everybody else is going to get it after here. All right, this is kind of more about who's in the room on it. How many of you guys are marketers? How many of you guys are maybe data analytics people? How many of you guys, I'm going to bucket this, don't hate me, IT and web dev? All right, and then how many of you guys are like C-suite or founder? Perfect on that. That's super helpful for us. All right, Dan, I'm going to jump ahead to our next slide. Whoops, there we go.
So here are 7 questions that you should ask yourself, and it's going to help you understand whether you're on track or not. We're actually going to give you some of the benchmarks for some of this, but what percentage of your sales do you spend on analytics? Do you have documented definitions and sources for those KPIs? What level of insights? We'll talk about the 4 levels of insights. So we're going to ask you, where are you in that journey? Do you have processes in place to build your forecast, both from a top down and a bottoms up? And do you actually understand what that means? Do you have an idea of how to go do that? Do you track your KPIs? What are your KPIs? And do you actually track them? Do you check in periodically, at least monthly, into those KPIs, especially those that drive your forecast, right? I bet a lot of you build revenue plans, but it's not very helpful to your staff if you go and tell them, get more sales. What you want to do is break that down into something that I can actually do, right? So sales, traffic times conversion. You can address conversion and you can address traffic, and those might be different people in your organization. So you need to break your KPI down your revenue into these different KPIs to allow you to track those monthly and forecast off of those. And that way you can talk to your team around what is the actual metric that they have the opportunity to go change. Because if you come to me and say, hey, Dan, get more sales, not very helpful. I'm not being very helpful as a manager, as a leader to me, telling me just go get more sales. Is analytics a shared resource? So you've got maybe one or two people in the organization that are helping you with analytics, or is it something that you do across different departments? Oh, my site team, kind of their person does the analytics, my marketing person does it. And we'll come back to why that's really important around kind of definitions, that number 2. And then lastly, is it a core company value? If making analytically driven decisions isn't a core company value, and I like to do that, that it's your gut, then being data-driven is going to be a challenge.
All right, so I'm going to set up the next slide here first, Dan. I thought this slide was absolutely brilliant. I'd never actually really thought about this before. So I want everybody to kind of pay attention to this.
So I talked about financial resources. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we saw a lot of build up with a lot of organizations and spending more and more money trying to become data-driven. And then most of us in the last 12 months have been really driven towards have this kind of rug pulled out from underneath of us where investors or wherever saying, you've got to become profitable. It used to be growth at all costs, and now it's profitability. And that's put a lot of pressure on companies to really go from being, you kind of became tech companies based upon the amount of people that I had around data. And now I have to scale back, and it's really hard. And the problem is in retail, your budgets aren't that big. Retail can't afford to spend that much on analytics like a tech company, a financial services company. And it's because of this breakdown. How many of you are in beauty? Anyone? Beauty has massive margins. Most of us are probably dealing with margins in maybe the 60% range, right? Our COGS, the cost of the product that we're selling is probably around 30 to 40%. And then we're probably spending around 20 to 30% on marketing if we're good, maybe more than that if we're earlier stage. You got your logistics, and so that leaves you with like 10 to 15% in G&A if you're trying to generate a profit. And that's kind of big retail, right? If you go look at the big retails, this is essentially how they break down. And so when you then go into G&A, which is accounting, finance, legal, and I got to pay for my Shopify fees, and I got to pay my 2.5% or whatever that I'm paying, right, for transactions, it basically leaves me with somewhere between 0.25% that I can spend on analytics. Maybe 1% when I'm early on. So this is what's mind-blowing. If you're a $100 million company, you're doing $100 million in sales, that means maybe tops you can spend $1 million on data and analytics, but probably more, like $500K. So we'll get to this. That means like maybe you can have 2 people because people are expensive. And so we have to be really thoughtful around what I can spend on analytics and being data-driven, and I have to learn how to be really efficient. If you spend more than this early on, you're going to end up having to cut back. And I can tell you that a lot of larger companies are now cutting back in a lot of their data and analytics because they hired 3, 4, 5, 6 people and are now saying, whoa, wait a minute, I can't do that anymore. It's too expensive. Because if you're the CFO, if you're a finance guy, a finance person, would you rather spend money on data analytics or put it into marketing? And I can tell you 100% they're going to want to put it into marketing.
All right. So what tools should I use on that, Dan? Some great questions here for the crowd. Should we use Google Analytics 4? Should we use off-the-shelf tools? You guys probably have heard of Peel, Polar, Triple Whale, Northbeam, some of those. Data warehouse platform, Dacity. I think we have somebody here from Dacity. Source Medium, or should I build my own, right? These are great questions, but then do I have to staff this up? And so before we get into this too far, we're going to go fast through this, but we're just going to lay out some really basic definitions, and Dan really is the expert in this, so I'm going to let him take this.
So what's a data warehouse? It's just basically a way for you to store all the data across all the different sources you have. And here's 3 that are most common: Redshift, BigQuery, Snowflake. And so it gives you a great starting point to capture everything so you can analyze your entire business.
So what does it look like, Dan? I mean, put this picture up on the screen, but, you know.
Yeah, for the technical people of us, this is actually what data might look like when I'm in looking at it. So this is a good example of Snowflake, and just allows me to kind of see the individual data. What's really going to be useful is how it's all aggregated, summarized. And if we go to the next slide, using tools like this, being able to see your data in aggregate summary, to see the trends, the pinpoints, to help you understand how to go figure out where you need to spend time in your organization, in your business, to go really drive your outcome, which for most of you is sales.
All right, so Dan, how should we actually approach this? What makes sense maybe for the people in the room? And let's, have a conversation about it.
Yeah, for me, I would say the last thing you should do is try and build it by yourself.
Why? I mean,
because
shouldn't we own our stuff,
If you try and build it yourself and use a lot of these off-the-shelf tools that I mentioned, like Fivetran, DBT, et cetera, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to hire a data engineer that costs you about $100,000 to $150,000 a year, and that's going to eat away from your budget. So you can start off with Google Analytics 4, but we'll talk about some of those challenges later.
And is this hard, Dan? I'm going to keep asking you, is it hard?
And then go into these other tools, and eventually you might want to use a platform like ours, where we help you with all of this out of the box.
Why is something like this so hard? And maybe let's look at literally one example, right? People can't even align on a definition of what revenue is, right?
So we talked about how you have to align. One of the key items, right, after knowing how much you spend, is aligning on definitions. Have you ever noticed how Google Analytics revenue doesn't match Shopify?
Sure.
Yeah. And when you're talking to somebody on your team and you say, what are my sales? Do you have you defined whether your number is coming from Google Analytics or from Shopify? And do you end up in conversations where you disagree around the number? You have to be very, very specific around the definitions and what your source of truth is, right? Because Google Analytics isn't going to get returns, cancels, refunds. They're not going to get that kind of stuff. And then Shopify's got some own quirks around the way that they track stuff. So one of the first things you have to do, besides figuring out what you are going to do for your analytics, is decide on and define the metrics and define the source of truth.
All right, Dan, let's nerd out a little bit here with some things and talk about maybe what's hard. What is ETL?
Extract, transform, load. So it's the way that your data is replicated. If you have a data warehouse, it's the way that you're going to get that data out of that SaaS platform and bring it into your data warehouse.
So what if Shopify is in Eastern time and my Google Analytics is in Pacific and my company runs in Central? Do we have a problem?
You do, right? You massively do. That's actually sometimes what happens with people. You're in your Shopify reporting, your Google Analytics is not set up the same time zone, and you have a differentiation. Those are things that you can address through your data warehouse.
You know, why is this so hard? I mean, there's only like 5,000 platforms you have to do this for, right?
There you go.
On it. I think it is a challenging thing. So that's one reason to not do it yourself. Let's look at another example. Like, what would you say like data normalization or standardization is? I mean, revenue, you know, how would we standardize that? Like, do we think returns? Does it include shipping? Does it include taxes? Do you have any other kind of ideas?
You're going to be challenged around sales is the most common metric that you have to decide on. You have to think about sessions, user, how are you defining things like sessions, profit. There's a lot of different kind of components that you have to decide as an organization where you're going to go and define what those metrics will be and how you calculate them. For a great example is like, does Google Analytics capture every transaction you have if you're not using Elevar?
No.
So should I calculate conversion? Do I take the Google Analytics answer? Or do I take my sessions from Google Analytics, my orders from Shopify, and then calculate it? It's going to give you a different answer, right? And that's pretty important. So when I'm complaining to my neighbor here and there, we're arguing about whether my conversion's 1.8 or 1.9, you have to line around that definition.
All right, I'm going to talk about attribution, the fun word here on that. How many of you guys have tried to figure out attribution? Do we use last click? Do we use data-driven? How many of you guys have gone down the deep, dark black hole of looking for view-through conversions and trying to tag all of your tracking and figuring out if something's going to add up, and it never works? You guys, there's no such thing as like perfect attribution on it. It's something that I chased for many, many, many years trying to figure out. And there are just easier ways to go about it. So I don't want you guys to necessarily confuse what we're talking about here with attribution. Really here, I want to look at like the analytics and the data that we have and then what we do with it. All right, I'm going to go to this next slide, and I really tried to incorporate this one throughout the presentation. This is a framework that Dan put together, and you're going to see these colors and these boxes throughout it just to kind of like give you guys a flag of a definition of where we're going. So Dan, I'll let you talk about this slide.
So this is really going back to that, where in your analytics journey are you, or with the insights? There's 4 different kinds of insights that you can get, and they're really different layers. So descriptive, what happened? I got X in sales yesterday. I made $1,000 in sales yesterday. That's very descriptive. Diagnostic would be, hey, I got $1,000 in sales that was driven by 10,000 sessions with a 1% conversion rate, with a AOV of X amount of dollars. And maybe I'd even break that down into how many units were bought on average and what was the average price that was paid. That is, why did it happen? Which is way more useful than what happened, right? The why, because as I said, can I really impact sales? Go get more sales. Not very helpful. But if I said to you, what I'd like you to do is improve units per transaction or average retail price, that's something that your team can actually go impact and gives them a direct instructions. So diagnostic, why did it happen? Prescriptive is like what to do. And that usually comes in with a forecast, right? If I'm building a forecast, building a sales forecast that just says, I want to get this much in revenue is not going to be very helpful. But going and building your forecast off of those metrics now becomes very helpful, because I can now say, hey, I missed on my units per order, units per transaction. So how do I go increase that? What do I need to do to go increase that and get to that KPI that now levers up and will drive sales? And then predictive is what will happen. Don't try to get to predictive. It's like really expensive. It's not worth it for most of you. For most of us in the retail industry and consumer brand industry, we're going to go find value by either being diagnostic or or prescriptive, by either knowing why did something happen or what to do about it. And if you can get there, you're really going to help your brand. You're going to see a lot of value. You're going to see a lot of great ability to drive performance out of your brand.
And that's so honest of you, Dan, because, it's expensive to go be predictive. So now we're going to kind of look at a couple models here, and let's kind of talk about this. Everybody's here for a reason, to learn something, to grow revenue, right? To save money. But when we look at this, Dan, I know you put together this framework. You wanted to really drill in on like 4 ways to grow revenue through acquisition and retention, but go ahead.
It's kind of mind-blowing that business is actually fundamentally pretty simple when you go down to like a mathematical basis. Sales. It's either a new person you're selling to or somebody that you've had before. It's kind of not that hard. And we get all into details around how's my site performing and all these different pieces, and we kind of lose the forest right through the trees. And so these are the 4 things that these are the only options you have. You're either getting a new customer to purchase or you're getting somebody to buy again. And if you're getting somebody to buy again, they're either buying something new from you or they're buying the same product that they bought before. Now, for me in the flower industry, that same product was really important because, hey, you're buying your mom flowers. Well, can I get you to buy flowers for her birthday or an anniversary? Well, a little bit harder for most of us if you're not in the gifting space to do that. And so you've got to get that same product, and it's either I've got some sort of product that allows me for repeat purchase because I'm a consumable, or can I get them to go gift it to somebody else? So you have 4 levers to basically grow revenue, and that's it. It's pretty simplistic from a math perspective. Now, the hard part is like, how do you actually go do it? That's the hard part. And we'll walk you through a bunch of analysis that'll help you around figuring out where should you go spend your time and how do you go actually think about some of these different areas.
So we're going to make everybody do a little bit of work now. Start thinking here, right? Maybe make your brain hurt a bit. But Dan, you put together these examples here on this. And does anybody know what this chart is called? You can shout it out. Does anybody? No? Dan?
This is called a layer cake. And it is my favorite graph of all time. And we're going to show you on the next slide actually how to go create it yourself. And we have a link to an example. So when you get the slides after, we'll have the link to example. But it's my favorite because it tells you immediately where a brand should go focus. So you've got sales on the vertical axis and your quarter of sales on the horizontal axis, and it's layers. So basically each color is the quarter of acquisition of customers. And what you're doing is you're plotting a group of customers and the amount of revenue that you got from that group of customers or cohort. So brand A, you'll notice that those layers, it's like you got a lot of revenue at the start, right? You got a lot of revenue in that first quarter and then it's kind of flat. And that's why they call it a layer cake, because it kind of layers on top of them, layers on top. And so what's interesting in this example is these 2 brands make the exact same revenue each quarter. Brand A has really good retention and those layers just start to build. Brand B, you'll see those layers get smaller and smaller and smaller over time, but their acquisition gets higher. So there's no right or wrong answer, but hands up if you'd rather be brand A. Hands up if you'd rather be brand B. More people want to be brand A. Yeah, I've got a good retention business. I can always pump more money into marketing and try and grow my acquisition. So this is really helpful. Go. So if we can go to the next slide, here's a link to Google Sheet where I've got an example of like how to go do it. Basically, all you're going to do is you're going to go into a Google Sheet, plot your acquisition quarter. You can pull this from Shopify. You could do it by month. So for all of you, go into your Shopify sales report, acquisition quarter on the left side, calendar month on the right. It's going to make a little triangle like this. And you get that plot, and you can immediately tell, where do I need to focus? Acquisition or retention? You can do this in 10 minutes. And now you've nailed that first question, where do I go? Where do I spend my time? Because the hard part now begins. Acquisition isn't easy, and neither is retention, but you need to go figure out where do you want to go focus.
So what about retention, Dan?
So this is a great way of tracking retention, something that we do in our product and was very important for me at ProFlowers, was segmenting customers into things like high value, purchased 3 times in the last year, to a single buyer to a multi-buyer. The hardest part of retention is getting that customer to go from the first to the second purchase. And so I would track every month and go see what percentage of my sales came from that segment. What was their AOV? What was their units per transaction? What was their retail? So that I could figure out what I needed to do. If a segment was underperforming compared to last month or what I forecasted, maybe I needed to send another email, not to everybody, but just to that segment. Maybe I needed to find out what the product was that those customers that did buy were buying to recommend. So now I can get into the tactical strategies that I need to go execute in order to improve my retention.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you wanted to add there? All right. I guess I'm going to start taking over. All right. Maybe, should we trade spots, Dan?
Sure.
Trade. All right. Some PSAs here on this. So we're trying to figure out where to put this, but there's some important announcements. How many of you guys have backed up your GA3 Universal Analytics? No one? We got a couple more months.
A couple more months, but I tell you, it goes fast.
It's going to go by quick. This isn't our tool. There's no affiliate commission, no association with it. You guys can scan the QR code. There's a tool called Analytics Canvas that we've used for a bunch of our clients. It's super easy, super simple. We've tried over 30 platforms. This is the one that works best on that. So just want to give that out to you guys. Got another one for you guys on it. Oh, here, I'll go back. I'll let everybody get a chance to scan. All right. How many of you guys have started tracking GA4 revenue from Facebook shops after the cutover? Anybody? Good on that. So how would we go about doing this? You should create a new GA4 property, right? MetaPay checkout has to be enabled. Go to Commerce Manager, go to Settings, Business Assets, Third-Party Reporting Tools. Now you're going to notice here, I'm going to start putting these little colors along with, again, some of the predictive, diagnostic, et cetera on there. This is just easy. I think anybody in this room can do it. All right. So now let's get into some of these real-life examples that we've got. So I heard from the past presentation that Google Analytics 4 was maybe a struggle for people on that. How many of you guys logged into your dashboard maybe a year ago, saw this thing, and then just like X'd out and was like, I'll deal with this later? Everybody? And then everybody was like, oh, wait, I probably can't swear on stage. Explicit. I guess I have to use this, right? And then you were met with this thing, and you're like, great, what do I do with this? I'm supposed to make a report. And it's not very useful, right? So, oh, this is interesting. All right, imagine all these check marks are green check marks. What if Google Analytics 4 could just look like Google Analytics 3 again? Would we like that? I think we would all love that on it. So this was kind of like one of the missions that, our team took upon. And again, also in the top right, you're going to see this is descriptive, right? In terms of analytics. So we've got our line plot, we've got users, we've got sessions, we've got bounce rate again, which is the inverse of engagement rate. Session conversion rate, a new key metric, but that went away in GA4's kind of raw out of the gate dashboard, and it made it pretty unusable. And then another key metric we track on the right is, let's call it, I think we've got average purchase revenue, or AOV. Another one we use is average revenue per user. It's a really nice metric for understanding how much each person is making when they come to the site. All right, how many of you guys have made a Google Analytics 4 custom report? That's pretty good. So you have to have edit access to Google Analytics 4. You go to Reports, Library, and you create a new report. How many of you guys think that this sounds like a lot of work? Everybody? So again, is your Google Analytics 4 usable? How many of you guys have your channels broken out with custom channel groupings? That really sucked, right? When we had to use that default channel group that you couldn't edit for a long time, wasn't fun. How many of you guys log in and your menu looks like this? It's everybody in the room. Come on. Come on. There's only one person here, maybe named Carlos. Is Carlos here? He's right here. This is the only dashboard I've ever logged into where it didn't look like this on it. So good job on that. What if your dashboard could look like this when you logged into it? Looks a lot like GA3, huh, guys? Seems like a lot of work. How many of you guys would like this done for you for free? You can scan this QR code. If you're on Shopify and you have an e-commerce store and you're a brand, we're going to do it for free for everybody. We don't know how long it's going to take. It might take 7 days. It might take 30 days. We're going to get them all done. Go ahead and scan this, fill out the form. It's going to be awesome. This is our gift to you. You're welcome on it. All right, so now that everybody's going to have workable data, right, in the room, and everybody's excited that now they don't have to deal with nonsense in the dashboard, let's go on to some other stuff. So, Dan, one of your, I guess, what would you call this, dashboards or reports in Dacity?
Yeah, dashboard.
Right?
Yep.
Is this new product affinity, and what does this do?
You want to figure out bundles, upsells, maybe what to put as a recommended product in your lifecycle marketing. Use product affinity. So you can do this from one of two ways. You can look to see what people are naturally putting together in a cart themselves. That's a great way to figure out what you should bundle or upsell. And when you're bundling, one of the things that's really important is go find your high margin product versus your lower margin product. We all know what grocery stores do is loss leaders, right? Have we all heard of loss leaders in grocery store? Like when Coke, 7, Pepsi, whatever, they put them on sale and it's like, get you into the store to buy all the expensive stuff. You want to do that too. You want to go bundle something that is faster moving with something that is a little bit slower moving, but has a much higher margin to increase your overall profitability. And then this one here specifically is around figuring out what they put in their first, what they bought first, and what the customers buy second. And you can tailor all of your email flows, hopefully you're using flows, to go and start to put the products in there based upon what the first purchase was. Because this is the natural behavior that customers are using in their lifetime experience with you across multiple purchases.
All right. So a couple of years ago, my business partner, Habib, and I, raise your hand, Habib, on here, we acquired a business called The Kombucha Shop on it. And we actually plugged this into Dacity. So I also want to say everything that we're doing here up on stage is actually based in reality and not theory on it. So we have this one product. It's a kombucha kit. Imagine a beer brewing kit that you do at home. And we plugged it in and it spit this thing back saying, yeah, people come and buy tea. And then all of a sudden this other product showed up. And it was this metal funnel. And we're like, why do people want a metal funnel? And Babe and I, we knew nothing about kombucha, right? We're like, that's weird. And, you know, we started thinking and we started asking the team. And it turns out this funnel strainer thing strains out these gooey little booger snot things that come in your kombucha. And so this is like diagnostic, like here's what's going on. So then here's a look at that funnel. This is kind of what we're talking about, so it's visual for everybody. And so what do we do on the PDP on it? So this is the PDP before treatment, right? Just product name, description, price, add to cart, right? But then how do we help our customers, right? This is something that we can do that's very easy, very prescriptive. Plenty of Shopify apps that do that. Let's add some tea and let's add that metal strainer for people to do, right? We believe that in having that metal strainer, they'll have a better checkout experience. So that's just one easy thing you guys can do. to increase, one, your AOVs and your retention. All right, I've got this next question. How many of you guys, again, are leveraging Elevar for your Klaviyo flows or your Attentive flows? That's pretty good on it. I'm going to, again, I've sanitized client names for all this and everything. In the blue, we've got cart abandonment flows, just one part, not checkout, not browse. This is their revenue for, I think, 7 days. Sorry, I think 7 days, actually, since implementing Elevar. So normally their flow produces $29,000 just from that. With Elevar, we got $37,000 from it. Now, when you're pushing emails and SMS messages that cost a penny, what do you think happens? Your ROAS and all of your channels, Google ads, Facebook ads, it goes way up and allows you to spend because you're not wasting money trying to convert those people when you could convert them for a penny. You're just missing out on them. And this is the number one thing, seriously guys, the number one thing that we're doing to grow client revenue in this year. It is a night and day difference. This is why you have to use Elevar. How hard is this to do? It's intermediate. Add to cart, you're going to notice this little Elevar SS thing that's attached. That's the metric that Elevar pushes through. Abandoned cart, you guys have all seen this. It sends you an email saying, come back to your cart, buy the stuff. So what do all these flows look like? And for the people that haven't connected this, I know you guys haven't connected it because it's hard. I haven't had time. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to mess something up. Here's all the flows. You guys will get this in the slides. How many of you guys would just like us to do this for you for free? You can scan that. So why are we giving away these free things? Really, it's our chance to really provide value first. Then we just ask you guys give us the opportunity to see, right? Hey, is there anything that we can do to help your business, right? And we just want you guys to hear us out. If there's nothing there, we're going to tell you that. If there is something there, we're going to make you aware of it. We just want to have a conversation with you. All right, this is the really cool, awesome, exciting part. This is hard. I want to show you guys what is possible. And if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to get a sip of water here on it. So my timing thing up here says I've got 8 minutes left. So imagine we've got a luxury retailer. We'll use Louis Vuitton on screen. And a 14-year-old walks into the store, touches everything, picks up everything, asks the sales associate for every single size. What do you guys think is going to happen? And I know there's one person in the room that's going to be a smart explicit that's like, well, one person will check out. No, that's not the normal behavior, right? So what happens when we see somebody on our website engaging with all of our content, right? What do? We spend dollars remarketing to them because they're engaged, right? But these aren't the right people, right, to be remarketing. They're never going to buy. So why don't we change our behavior and our expectations on that? All right, I'm going to fast forward through some of this so you guys just kind of know what we did. We took Google Analytics 4 data and Shopify's data, sent it to a BigQuery data warehouse. Now we took all the traffic from visitors who did not make a purchase, just got rid of all of them, don't care about the noise, right? Then we score the content based upon what pages people went to more or less frequently, right? What's popular. Then we join that data with other data sources. I'm going to give some examples on the next screen. In this example, I'm going to use Experian Mosaic. Does anybody here know what Experian Mosaic is? Okay, very few. And then other ideas of joining data, customer lifetime value, weather, stock market, political affiliation, home value, and then some of the surveys, right, that you guys have that is unique to your business. Then we rescore that based on audience. And now you can start targeting those cohorts in terms of acquisition and retention differently. i.e., what would happen if you brought in a bunch of 14-year-olds, right? They purchased because they got something, a wallet from Louis Vuitton, right? And then they didn't come by again and drag down your metrics. Are we upset? No, on that. We just know that maybe they're going to make a one-time purchase and that's fine. All right, so data enrichment here. This is what Experian Mosaic looks like. And how many of you guys have written fake personas where it's like, Sally is 14, she's got 2 kids, and she has an interest in whatever my niche is, right? And we all have operated off of those before. This is Experian data. It's based off of actual credit card data. The profiles are robust. Every household we're going to look at today, I would consider affluent. This one is called American Royalty, A1, household income 250 plus, prestigious, luxury lifestyle. They have money, right? Here's also what Experian kicks out. Household data. Again, we have no affiliation with Experian. We're using as an example here. All right. Here's their quick persona. The most highly educated segment in the nation, gracious lifestyles in the fashionable suburbs. Over 50% are in their 50s and 60s, live in $1 million homes. Are you going to market to this person differently than somebody maybe on the other end of the spectrum? Absolutely on that. So what did we do? We created 2 metrics, and this came by absolute mistake. That tells page popularity, and if somebody wants to shop online. Don't worry, I'll explain this all in a second. Imagine we weight household expectations and figure out who's actually going to buy and not buy. And then we look at top performers by household or mosaic profile or whatever you guys want to do or segmented by and figure out who our A-tier people are, or for those gamers, S-tier on that. And then also who's high volume, but maybe not top performers. All right, so I've got some examples here. I put this into an Excel just so you guys could see. We actually have it built out in like a Looker Studio. But we've got some things, actual page views, expected page views by household. These are descriptive and predictive metrics. And then we have this other metric that I'll get into. It's the percent difference page view. And this is something that we'll look at that can become prescriptive. All right, so let's look at this kind of box right here that's outlined. I'm going to do a good job with all these boxes, so don't worry. All right, so when we see these numbers here in this column, this means that people went to these pages more or less frequently than we expected. So positive number or negative number, it's not good or bad. It just means it's popular on that. And I'll do an example in a couple minutes. How about this one? This is the percent difference in expected transactions. So plus, it means it took more page views than expected to get a transaction. It's probably bad. Minus, it took less page views than expected to get a transaction. Probably good. All right, let's look at this example here. Highlight this all in blue. People who went to the sale page, they went there 33% less than expected for this persona, right? Okay, they've got money. So what? But this other group, again, they went to the terms and service page 131% more than expected. Huh. And it took them 213% more page views of that page to make a transaction. Tells me there's something wrong with that page that they're not liking there in the terms, right? How about this other group? I'm going to fast forward here. A5, couples with clout. This is essentially the burnt out millennial that has 2 kids running around screaming. And they're just like, oh my gosh, I just need this thing. Just give it to me. All right. So again, I'm using this example here. Let's pretend it's a business attire suit company like that. It took people who went to the expedited page 43% fewer page views than expected to get to a transaction. Huh. I wonder why. They just want it. They want it now. Again, remember, these people all have money, but we need to treat these people differently. What else can we do with this data? We can layer it on top of each other and compare different household groups on it. And this is where it gets really fascinating. Again, A1, these are the wealthiest people in America, right? But this is showing, right, it takes a lot more work to convert these people, particularly for this client of ours, right? But this other audience, the burnt out millennial with money, they just buy stuff. They don't need to see content. They just check out. That's it, right? So who would you guys want to target and spend your effort on, right? It's pretty obvious on that. All right, so I'm going to do I've got 2 minutes here, it says on screen. I'm going to do an example all for you guys to really think about. And like I said, I'm going to make your brain hurt on it. We have a group here, B07. They make $125,000 to $150,000 in household income. They're affluent. They're rooted in suburbs. I'm going to read their thing. They have upscale tastes. They shop at Nordstrom, maximize their dollars, shop at Kohl's. They're also careful about spending and looking for sales and coupon offers. I'm going to put this on screen for about 15, 20 seconds. See if you guys can extract an insight yourself. All right, I'm going to flip to the next slide. I'm going to highlight something that I found when we looked through the data. So this group, they go to sales. They went there 29% more than we expected on it. And then it took them 53% more page views than expected to get a transaction. What does that mean to me on it? They went to sale because they're looking for a deal, and then they either didn't find what they're looking for or it was still out of their price range and price tier. So the point of all this is, how do we adjust our marketing and behavior, acquisition, targeting, retention, or based upon the household on that? I think that about wraps us up.
All right, thanks everybody.